When I was young, I was broadly interested in conservation. I didn't have a particular interest in the oceans when I was young, but I was certainly had a kind of general conservation sensibility, like lots of people do. Like I could look around and see that the world wasn't doing a very good job of taking care of a lot of creatures and natural places, and I was worried about what that meant. But I didn't know a damn thing about the oceans, and I was not a fish head. I did not have, like some people do, like a fascination with the creatures. So the reason I ended up, the path I took to Oceana is a little bit non-standard. About 10 years ago, a little bit more than that, the people who founded Oceana were looking for somebody to lead the place, and I was acquainted with them because we had worked in other stuff together. And I came in to help, not with the intention of leading it. I came in to help, and in the process I learned about what was happening to the oceans. And there were scientists here who taught me about ocean collapse and taught me about what was driving ocean collapse. And they taught me that there were very straightforward solutions to it, that it was a fixable problem. And the board of directors who had set up Oceana had an approach that I thought was very practical and businesslike and real likely to work. And so I got interested. Main goals of Oceana are to win policy changes that will make the oceans more abundant. So stopping overfishing is a simple summary of our goal. Ocean collapse is driven by overfishing, and overfishing is a serious problem for the world because we have a lot of hungry people on the planet, about 1 billion hungry people right now, and we need the oceans to be well managed so that there's lots of fish for people to eat and there's lots of fishing jobs for people to have. And so our goal is to do that. So we work country by country to get in place laws that stop overfishing and to get those laws enforced. And we work right now in Europe, in the United States, in Belize, and in Chile. And we're trying to raise more money so that we can go to other countries. We set up goals that are like 3 or 4 year goals, and the goal is a win or lose goal. You know, it's not like a fuzzy goal. It's not like, let's do better for the oceans in the United States if we can, which is frankly what a lot of groups kind of do. We say, no, we want to win quotas for, and we'll name this, we'll name the fish, and we'll give ourselves a deadline to get there. Or we want to protect habitat. We want to stop people from wrecking up ocean habitat in this place, and we want to get X thousand square miles done by such and such a time. Or we want to reduce the killing of turtles by X amount, in the Gulf of Mexico. And we want a goal where, for our own sake and frankly for the sake of the people who give us money, that we can go back to them after 3 years and say, you know what, we did it, or we didn't do it. And everybody knows and has a reassuring sense of something real happened, or it didn't happen. It wasn't just a lot of people with good hearts kind of waving their hands and trying. And so we run policy campaigns, and here's how we think about them. So we identify the decision we have in mind. So here's an example. In Chile, Chile's a country in South America. I assume you know. It's on the west coast of South America. It's 2,100 miles of coast. Huge coastal ocean country. Some of that coast is full of creatures. Some of that ocean is healthy and abundant. So it's a place called Punta de Choros, which our board went to see, where there were like dolphins and blue whales and seabirds and really abundant place. And the Chilean government was considering building a coal-fired electricity plant, generating plant there, that was going to cool its boilers with once-through cooling. So it was going to suck in seawater, cold seawater, use it to cool down the boiler, and then put the seawater, dose it with toxins so that the algae wouldn't grow inside the power plant, and then push the now toxin-laden cooling water that's now heated. You don't have to be a scientist to worry about what that was going to do to Punta de Choros' marine life. It was going to put a lot of toxins into the water. It was going to heat the water. It was going to change the biology of that place. So we set the goal of stopping the construction of that plant. Okay. Now that was a difficult goal because the plant was designed to provide electricity to one of the biggest industries in Chile, which is copper mining. So how do you design a campaign? So once you define the goal, like we did, stop this power plant, next thing to do is to figure out who has authority to do that. Who's the decision maker who can approve or not approve this plant? In Chile, it turned out to be the president of the country. who's actually going to make the final decision. Then once you have that, and then you give yourself a deadline. In this case, we gave ourselves a 3-year deadline. And then you say, okay, once I know that who my decision maker is, who I got to convince, you think very carefully about that person and what do they care about? What will they respond to? And you got 5, what we think of as campaign tactics: science, law, press, grassroots lobbying, and grassroots organizing and lobbying. And sometimes you have to use a little bit of everything. Sometimes you realize, no, this is a guy who really just cares about how he looks in the press. And if I can just get the press to cover this, I got his attention. Sometimes you have somebody who, this is a really science-oriented person, and we just got to show them the science. Sometimes you got to threaten them with a lawsuit. Sometimes it's all the above. So we are capable at Oceana of doing all those things. We have lobbyists, we have scientists, we have lawyers, we have press people, we have we have everything. We have lobbyists. So when we come after you, we want you to know that we've come after you. We feel like we land hard on you, and everywhere you look, there's an Oceana message coming at you. So the world has 7 billion people on it right now, and the standard forecast is that there will be 9 billion people on the planet by the year 2050. Could be a billion more, could be a billion less. Nobody knows exactly, but that's the standard forecast. So 2 billion more people between now and 2050. That's 2 China's worth of new people. At the same time, people are forecasting that there will be an increase in the middle class in developing countries like Brazil, India, China, and that means that there will be an even bigger increase in food demand, because you have all these people who are currently poor and are now going to be middle class. So 70% increase in food demand is forecast. So one really big problem is how you're going to feed everybody. And how you're going to feed everybody without if you're going to do that only from terrestrial agriculture, you have a serious problem, because it means cutting down an awful lot of forests to plant even more fields, cornfields and so forth. It means irrigating, finding fresh water to irrigate all those cornfields. Plus you have climate change hitting us. So the breadbaskets of the world that are currently feeding the world are going to get disrupted, because some of them are going to get less rain and other places are going to get too much rain. So at the very moment that you need all this new food, you're getting disruption to your existing agricultural systems, and so you got a big problem. So in that context, we've been saying the oceans need to play a really important role, and our analysis is that they can provide more fish than they ever did in history if we do a better job at managing them. That you could actually get 20 or to 40% more fish every year, and do it forever, if you would manage the oceans better. And that management in the oceans comes down to getting especially these top 10 countries, to do a better job. So in Europe, we are at an exciting moment. We are at toward the end of a 3 or 4 year battle to win changes in the laws in Europe that govern fishing. So the laws that determine what the quotas will be, and what habitat needs to be protected, and how bycatch needs to be managed. And we have a goal of getting a strong enough set of laws that the European fishery will rebound, and there will be by 2020 an actual, like a 40% increase in the number of fish in catchable fish in the European Ocean. So that's our most important European goal: is finishing the reform of what's called the common fishery policy in Europe, so that it sets the terms for a big resurgence in the abundance of the European Ocean. In the United States, I would say our number one goal here is, 2 things. One is to require traceability of seafood. The United States imports nearly 90% of our seafood. And we've learned that about a third of the time, the fish that you buy is not what they told you it was. So there's a rampant seafood fraud. It's mislabeling of species, sometimes to take a cheap fish and sell it as an expensive fish. So we think the way to stop that practice is to require that all fish be traceable, so that when you buy it, you could ask where was this fish caught, when was it caught, how was it caught, and kind of like when you buy berries or any kind of produce at the grocery store, there's a code on the bottom of your strawberry package that lets you trace that all the way back to the quarter acre where that berry was picked. So we want the same thing to be done for fish. Why is that good? Make it harder for them to cheat you, sell you fish that's not what they said it is. Be good for people who are concerned about health, especially. And then the conservation benefit is that illegally caught fish that are caught in excess of quota, in the wrong place, in the wrong time, with the wrong gear. It would be hard for those fish to be sold to Americans if everything had to be traced. Another big goal in the United States is to stop ocean oil drilling. After the BP well blew up in the Gulf of Mexico in April 20th, 2010, and they almost wrecked the Gulf of Mexico, we thought the case, against ocean oil drilling was pretty clear, and that you shouldn't be risking your beaches and your fisheries, which are permanent. So the book basically says you can save the oceans and help feed the world, and that the opportunity is bigger than people have realized to do that, and more achievable than people have realized. It also talks about food. So a lot of conservation books talk about the creature as a creature that deserves to live and be happy in natural environment. We know from our experience here that when you talk about food, you have a lot more people listening to you than when you talk about conservation. And so we wrote a food book. We said, if you're interested in food, you should read this book. And then we introduced the conservation idea as a secondary theme. Save the oceans, feed the world. And that was a very conscious effort in writing the book. So there are recipes in the book from celebrity chefs. How often do you get a conservation book that has recipes in it? And in fact, when I was interviewed on CBS this morning, day before yesterday, Gail King said to me, this is a little strange to me. You're telling us to save these creatures so we can eat them? That doesn't feel right. And she's right. I mean, the answer is it's an unusual feeling. It's an unusual appeal. But it feels unusual because wild fish are the last wild creature that we all eat a lot of. And so our relationship to wild creatures isn't typically characterized. We don't think of them as food that often. We think of wild creatures as wild creatures. So there are 4 or maybe 5, depending upon how you count it, rules, guidelines we'd like people to use when they buy and eat fish. Eat wild fish. Eat small species. Eat local if you can. Eat all the farmed mussels, oysters, clams that you can stomach. And I'm sorry to say it, but you need to stop eating shrimp. And then, of course, get involved. You need to get involved with a group like Oceana or another conservation group and help press people who manage the ocean to do a good job, because they're getting pressed by some members of the fleet to do the wrong thing, and they need to feel from people on the other side pressure to do the right thing.